Hello everyone, welcome to Baji Rao IAS Academy. Today is 17th November 2023. In this session, we will be discussing a few previous year ethics questions. Okay, these questions are asked in the previous year questions. So, the first question that we are going to discuss is about gratitude and empathy as the fundamental values or the fundamental concepts in ethical theories, because they have a very key priority in ethical theories. However, the concern is that the present generation has been forgetting these values, or there has been a large scale value erosion has been taking place with respect to the present generation. So in this context, we need to write, or we need to understand what are the necessary conditions, or what are the necessary steps that have to be taken to bring these values back into the present generation. So how can we inculcate these values into the present generation? So that is what we need to address. So in the introduction, you just briefly define what constitutes empathy and gratitude. So in fact, there are three related concepts. So we very often come across sympathy, empathy, and also compassion. So this is a different degrees of response. Whenever someone has been suffering or someone has been facing problems, what should be the response of the other person? So empathy, sympathy and compassion represents a different degrees of response from the other individual. So in this context, empathy refers to the ability to imagine oneself in others place. For example, someone has a problem, has a financial problem, or someone has been in stress because of some personal reasons. So we understand those their problems. Okay, so the ability to imagine oneself in another's place, we are imagining in another's place. And when we are in another's place, we also try to understand the feelings, desires, ideas and actions. So this is very important for a socially appropriate behavior. So when we are able to understand the feelings, desires and actions of others, then we can come across a socially desirable and appropriate behavior. Okay, so otherwise empathy can also be defined as an act of perceiving or understanding, even experiencing and then responding to an emotional state, okay, or the ideas of another person. In fact, empathy has a very crucial role in social life, even in personal life and even in your professional life, because when you are in a professional life, you have to understand the emotions of your subordinates, so that a healthy work culture can be built over in that particular area. Okay, so the interpersonal skills and intrapersonal skills are also very important. So in this context, an empathetic point of view is achieved by setting aside our own interest. So whenever we are thinking in an empathetic manner, we set aside our own interests. So the interests which are involved, which benefit us. So we set aside those interests and even the current dispositions, the beliefs which we already hold and relation to the agent, and sympathizing, we start sympathizing with the effects of the person's actions. So this is what the sympathy this is what the empathy actually represents. So however, there are actually three ways of looking at empathy. So how do we look at empathy? So there are three ways. One is affective empathy, cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. So this can be called as CAB component. Okay, so affective empathy, cognitive empathy and also emotional empathy. So what is affective empathy? So it means we just share our emotions with our fellow beings. Okay, so we are sharing our emotions with the people. So this is known as affective empathy. So we are just empathizing with other individuals. So there's another component called cognitive empathy. So cognitive means understanding the emotions of others. So someone has been facing some problem, so he's going through a situation, so we understand their emotions, we understand their problems. And also there's an emotional empathy. So emotional empathy is a self-regulating, so we regulate our own emotions. Regulation of our own emotions are also very important to become an emotionally intelligent individual. So in this context, emotional empathy helps us in self-regulating oneself, self-regulating our own emotions. So we have discussed what constitutes empathy. Now understand what exactly the meaning of gratitude. So gratitude is actually a feeling of being thankful for something that you have done for yourself or others. So you have helped your friend. Okay, so your friend will be thankful for your help. Okay, so therefore this is what is called as gratitude. So he shows gratitude in return. Okay, so the reciprocity is gratitude. So you have helped someone, you have helped your relatives, you have helped your subordinates and your friends, and in return they show gratitude. So this is what gratitude is. So this is a feeling of being thankful for something that you have done, okay, for yourself or for others. So practicing gratitude has a number of benefits. Okay, so what are those benefits? So first and foremost, it improves one's own mental health, because we have been helping someone, so we feel better someone getting out of their difficult times. So therefore it improves our mental health. It also satisfies our inner consciousness, our inner conscience. So that is very important. So in fact it helps in strengthening our self control, self regulation towards others. And helping someone is also showing sympathy, empathy, and compassion towards others. So they are the essence and root of dharma. That is what has been said by Bhagavad Gita also. So in fact, the gratitude will also help in career and life goals. So we can fulfill our goals, our career targets. So after that, it to a large extent it will help in facilitating the social well-being of the people, and it will also result in improving our physical health. So in fact it creates a happy and healthier society. So it builds social harmony in the larger society. So these are the benefits of gratitude. Now we need to understand the benefits of being empathetic or showing gratitude to someone else. Okay, so what are the benefits? So the first benefit is we can build strong social connections with the other people. So building strong social connections are also very important for peaceful and harmonious society. Okay, so therefore empathy and gratitude in fact allow people to build and develop strong social connections. So in fact, by understanding what the others have been thinking and what the others have been going through, so what the others have been feeling. Okay, so therefore it is very important for us to respond in a socially appropriate manner. So we regulate ourselves firstly, and apart from regulating ourselves, we also respond appropriately to various social situations, whether in our personal life or social life, even in the professional life as well. So therefore, in a nutshell, empathy will help in developing social connections with the people. So secondly, research has already shown that the research has been conducted on the value of empathy and the value of gratitude. So how they are really helpful. So in fact it has shown that the social connections are important for both physical and psychological well-being of individuals. So they improve the physical and psychological well-being of individual. For example, when you are helping someone who are in problems, who are facing difficult times, so it gives a sense of satisfying our own consciousness, our own conscience, right? So therefore it improves physical as well as psychological well-being. So after that, in fact, practicing empathy or gratitude helps in regulating our own emotions. So regulation of our own emotions, self-regulation is very important. It is one of the component of an emotionally intelligent individual. Okay, for example, whenever you are in an administration, you not just shows emotions, but it is also important that you control your emotions and take decisions in an objective manner. Okay, objective and rational decision making is very important. For that, you have to control your own emotions. So therefore, empathizing with others helps you learn or regulate one's own emotions. So, what are the benefit? Why we need to regulate our emotions? So, we need to regulate our emotions because it allows you to manage what you are feeling. For example, you are feeling for something, and when you are feeling, your decisions should be rational. Okay, so there should be a healthy mix of your emotions and the objective and rational criteria when you are taking or making any decisions. So, decisions should not just solely be taken either on the objective criteria or only based on the emotions. Okay, so therefore that is the essence of effective decision making. You should not be overwhelmed by the decisions, the emotions which you have already which the emotions which you already have. So after that, empathy promotes the helping behavior among individuals. So not just the empathy. For example, you when you feel gratitude, then your friend also feel like, okay, so the help which I have done to him has been reciprocated. Okay, so the help has been reciprocated. So in a similar sense, empathy will promote helping behavior. So helping behavior is a very important in the present society, because so this helping behavior, helping more number of people, will engage more and more individuals in this process. Okay, so they feel empathy for other people as well. So however, other people are also more likely to help you when you experience empathy. Okay, so these are the benefits of being empathetic. Now, how can we inculcate empathy and gratitude? The present generation has been losing the values of empathy and gratitude. So why they are losing these values? Because there's lack of healthy socialization. Healthy socialization. And so if you look at Indian family system, so the joint family system is one of the core of the healthy socialization. However, after globalization, so the joint family system has been dismantling. There's a growth of nuclear families. Because of the career ambitions of the parents, they are not able to pay adequate attention to their children. Okay, so this is another reason. And the education system has not been providing adequate values like empathy and gratitude among the children. So now we have been excessively focusing on, the younger generation have been excessively involved in individualism. So individualistic attitudes, commodification, commodification. So because of all these factors, the younger generation has not been able to inculcate the values of empathy and gratitude. So inculcation of these values are very, very important. So in this context, what we should do to inculcate both empathy and gratitude? Firstly, we need to emphasize on sensitivity training. Okay, so the sensitivity training involves a set of activities. For example, conducting field works, role playing games, and perspective taking. For example, perspective taking means thinking from the different perspectives. So for example, there's an environmental degradation. So there are different stakeholders who are being involved. So one is a more advantageous position and the other is in a disadvantageous position. So therefore, perspective taking will also help in developing the sense of empathy and will ultimately result in showing gratitude towards someone or something. So the value system has to be more and more emphasized in education system, or even the parents should focus on inculcating values among the uh, students and as well as children at an early age or early life, because that will ultimately lead to a healthy socialization of children. So therefore they can inculcate the values like empathy and gratitude. So emphasizing the spirit of sarvadharma sambhava. So this Sarva Dharma Sambhava, a feeling of equality, tolerance, this has been given by Mahatma Gandhi. Okay, so when you develop the spirit of sarmadharma sambhava through interactions among different social groups that develops a sense of non-violence, peace and tolerant society, and that also inculcate the values of empathy and gratitude irrespective of the race, religion, caste. Okay, so in fact this has been effectively used by filmmakers like Satyajit Ray. So Satyajit Ray used art and culture cinema as a medium, okay, to propagate the values. For example, Satyajit Ray, a famous movie, Panthar Panchali. Okay, so it realistically portray poverty in rural India. So such a realistic, even we can emphasize on Nukkad Natakas, street plays, and information communication and knowledge dissemination among the communities, community radios. So these are effective means to spread the values like empathy and gratitude. Okay, so because they have the faster spread compared to other means, so therefore these things have to be emphasized. However, empathy is the ability to see things from another person's perspective. So we have discussed the definition that what exactly empathy means. So empathy means we see things from the another person's perspective, and we also sympathize with another's emotions or other person's emotion. So therefore, in fact, putting ourselves in another's shoes plays an important role in establishing harmony and peace in the society. So we always strive for harmony and peace in the society. However, empathetic society has a lot of potential in realizing the goal of creating an harmonious and peaceful society. So therefore, empathy and gratitude are not just important for normal public or normal individuals, even for civil servants or civil services also, empathy has a very crucial role. Okay, because an empathetic administrator can be empathetic, and he can show empathy towards the weaker sections, the marginalized communities. Okay, so therefore the welfare benefits can be taken to those communities and will help them uplift from their miserable conditions. Okay, so this can be the values like empathy and gratitude have to be inculcated in the present generation also, and that is the essence of creating a harmonious and peaceful society. Okay, so this is all about this question, and the next question is about the corporate social responsibility. Now the corporate social responsibility is a very important topic. It is previously very frequently being asked by the UPSC, even last time also in 2023 mains examination. So the UPSC has been emphasizing more on corporate governance, corporate social responsibility. So therefore it is very important to emphasize focus on these topics, because especially after the globalization, the private investment and industry era has started, corporate social responsibility has a very crucial role. Okay, so because there are different stakeholders and shareholders are being involved, and corporate companies have to take responsibility of those stakeholders. Okay, so they should not pollute the environment, they have to respect the principles of environment, and local welfare should also be taken care by these corporates, because any environmental degrading practices not just impact the company but also the local communities who are living over there. So in this context, a question has been asking that corporate social responsibility represents humane side of corporate sector. So in this context, give your views. Okay, so corporate social responsibility actually represents the humane side of corporate sector. Okay, so there's also a human side. For example, when we talk about the other side of the corporate sector, so we always symbolize the corporate sector with the profit making motive. Okay, so they always have a profit making motive. They degrade the environment, destroy the environment, they pollute the natural resources because they take up a large scale extraction of these natural resources. Okay, so this is another side of the corporate sector. However, the corporate social responsibility is very often dubbed as a a responsible or a human face of the corporate sector. So the corporate social responsibility has been defined by World Business Council for Sustainable Development. So World Business Council for Sustainable Development has defined the corporate social responsibility. So in this context, what does this mean? Okay, so it is a continuing commitment by a business to behave in a ethically and contribute to the economic development while also improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families. Okay, so this is a lengthy definition, but corporate social responsibility simply means that ethical behavior of a company. Okay, so how the ethical behavior of the company should be? So the company should take care of the needs of the local communities. Okay, so local communities where the company has situated will also be a stakeholders in the company. Okay, so they have to take care of the local community and the society at a large, and at the same time they should contribute for the economic development, and they can also improve the quality of life of the local communities and the workforce who have been engaged with these corporate sector. So this is the simple definition of the corporate social responsibility. Now, in this context, there are different provisions with respect to the corporate social responsibility. So these provisions have been mentioned under the Companies Act 2013. So the Companies Act 2013 have provided various provisions. For example, Section 135 of the Companies Act specifically talks about the corporate social responsibility. Okay, so the section 135 is applicable for the companies and it is with respect to the corporate social responsibilities. So now what are the provisions with respect to the corporate social responsibility? For example, it says that an establishment, a remuneration and more, or a net worth of 500 crore have to contribute at least 2% of their average net profit. Okay, so last 3 years, so what was their average net profit? And out of the average net profit, 2% of their total profits have to be spent on the corporate social responsibility. So what are the areas where they can spend as part of the CSR? We can discuss about that. However, the companies who have a remuneration or the turnover of 500 crore or more, or they have been continuously making a profit of 5 crore, they have to spend at least 2% of their total profits on corporate social responsibility. Now, in this context, what are the areas where the CSR activities can be undertaken, can be done? For example, these are the areas: promotion of education in those areas where the industry has been located, and they can also take steps to eradicate extreme form of hunger and poverty. So in India, hunger and poverty are twin challenges so we have been facing. So eradication of extreme hunger and poverty is also a challenge. So after that, the gender equity and women empowerment, so this is another area where they can invest. Okay, so they can invest in the this is not an investment, but this can be considered as an expenditure, so where it this will lead to the gender equality and women empowerment. So after that, reducing child mortality and also improving the maternal health care of individuals. So in fact, combating HIV, AIDS, malaria and other diseases is also the area where they will focus as part of CSR. And environmental sustainability, social business projects, employment enhancing vocational skills. So vocational skills is also another area where they can focus. And after that, research across fields such as science, technology, medicine, and incubators funded by the center state or any state owned companies. So these are the areas where the CSR, corporate social responsibility funds, can be used. Now, after that, we have to understand the significance of the corporate social responsibility. So how we can consider this as a humane side of a Okay, so what are the significant aspects of the corporate social responsibility? First and foremost, the moral appeal. Okay, the moral appeal means this is in line with Gandhiji's trusteeship model. So we all know about the Gandhiji's trusteeship model. So it says that there's no private ownership of property. So rather, those who own, those who are wealthy, they are just trustees for the property. Okay, so they are not the real owners of the property, but they are just the trustees of the property, and they have to share their wealth with the poor sections of the society. Okay, so this is what the trusteeship model of Gandhi says, and CSR is also in line with Gandhi's trusteeship principle. So after that, the second most important aspect with respect to the corporate social responsibility is that so companies looking to satisfy, so they always look to satisfy the needs or the wishes of their respective shareholders. For example, in a private company there are different shareholders. Okay, and it is the responsibility of the company management to fulfill the wishes of those shareholders. So the benefits of the company, the profits of the company will be shared with all the shareholders. However, the company should not just take into consideration the shareholders, but stakeholders of a company are very important. So what are those stakeholders? For example, local communities, the workers and employees who are part of the company, and company management, and even environment is also considered as stakeholders. So all the stakeholders who have engaged directly or indirectly with the company have to be taken care as part of the corporate social responsibility. So in fact, if you look at the private companies who have been spending on girls education, who have been constructing schools, hospitals, they always maintain a good public image. Okay, they always maintain a good image in the eyes of public. So therefore those companies who spend on CSR activities, for example, spending on education, healthcare, hunger, poverty eradication, skill development. So those companies who have been spending in those areas, so they enjoy a large brand value and even the good public image. So we can mention about Tata group of companies and even Mahindra group of companies. So they have built a large brand value and they also enjoy a goodwill in the eyes of people. So after that, in fact, CSR provides companies to gain the trust of the local people. So there's no doubt that when they are spending for the development and the welfare of local communities, they earn the trust of these local communities. Okay, so that ensures that the resources are also allocated for the development of these local communities. Okay, so it is like a mutual give and take relationship between corporates and other stakeholders who are involved in this. So after that, so those companies who have been very liberal in terms of spending the money as part of the corporate social responsibility, so it increases their profitability, or it increases the profitability of the company. So because it develops a goodwill, it generates a goodwill and trust, and it also builds a large brand value for the company. Okay, so the ethical conduct of the company will further increase the influence, and it also plays a key role in purchasing decisions of the customers. So whenever a company has been investing in these corporate social responsibility activities, then customers prefer to buy the products of those companies. Okay, so this will also help the companies make huge profits in the long term as well. So apart from that, there's a competitive advantage. Okay, so what kind of a competitive advantages? Because there are some businesses, they show how they are more socially responsible. So when one company has been investing heavily in corporate social responsibility or high impact development projects, then that increases the goodwill, trust, and the other company will also start spending more money. So in a way, a healthy competition develops in this arena. So after that, there's also a morale boost for employees, because when we talk about the corporate social responsibility, we are taking care of not just the local communities but also the employees who have been engaged in the corporate sector. So therefore, CSR practices have a significant impact on employee morale, and it reinforces his confidence on company empathy. So therefore, this is also essence of enhancing companies productivity, because it boosts the morale of the employees, it motivates them, and it helps develop a healthy work culture, and that in turn increases the productivity of the company. So issues with the corporate social responsibility. Now, what are the issues the CSR has been facing currently? So first issue is the poor implementation of the corporate social responsibility is the major challenge. So because whenever we are thinking about spending the funds of corporate social responsibility, there is a very little strategic thinking or innovation, and what are the areas they have to spend on these money. So they are spending in a generic way. So there is a very little strategic thinking and innovation in the implementation of CSR. Okay. So however, the larger goal of the corporate social responsibility is not understood by these companies. Okay. So the companies view this as only a charitable endeavor rather than a responsible act by these companies. So they're just viewing it as a charitable endeavor. They have not understood the essence of CSR. So after that, there's also a lack of robust policy. So with respect to the corporate social responsibility, we fail to have a robust policy framework, a robust long-term policy framework, especially the CSR policy. So okay, so that leads to the failure in giving definitive direction to CSR spending. So this is another major challenge with respect to corporate social responsibility. So after that, there's also a huge duplication of the activities which are taken up as part of CSR. Okay, so duplication in terms of, there's lack of a collaborative approach between these corporates and corporate and the local communities. Rather, they have been viewing it as a charitable endeavor and a competitive approach, and that lead to the duplication of activities among these companies. So after that, they viewed the corporate social responsibility as an additional tax. So additional 2% of the corporate tax being imposed on the government on these corporates. So rather than a responsibility, rather than a social goal, they're just viewing it as a 2% additional tax on these companies. Okay, so that is being imposed by the government on these companies. So after that, there's also a skewed pattern of expenditure, because whenever they have taken up the CSR activities, so it is in line with the company's profitability and long-term growth. Okay, so they have been taking up this with respect to the company's operational perspectives and ease in implementation. So therefore, there are only few traditional aspects. So they have been focusing on those areas and neglecting the other areas of the CSR. So this is another major concern. For example, they have been investing in education and healthcare, but they have been neglecting the infrastructure development in rural areas. So therefore, the funds should not be skewed for only few areas, few domains. So all the developmental aspects should receive equal attention as part of the CSR spending. Now, after that, we have to understand the way forward. So, what should be the way forward in this respect? How can we motivate the corporate companies to come up with the CSR activities or CSR? So, we can announce awards for better companies. We can we can recognize those companies by giving them awards. Okay, so these awards will incentivize the companies to take up the corporate social responsibility activities. Okay, so incentivizing them and motivating them is also very important. Okay, so this can be given to large and small companies. Okay, different categories of companies, and this is recommended by Anil Baijal committee. So the Anil Baijal committee was also appointed on CSR activities, and this was recommended by Anil Baijan committee. Secondly, accountability of these companies is also very important. So companies should ensure that their CSR activities, the corporate social responsibility activities, they have clear objectives and also monitorable targets. Okay, so these targets will help diligently and stringently monitored. Okay, so these targets have to be regularly monitored. Now after that, the collaboration is also very important. Collaboration in the sense that corporate company, local NGOs, local communities, and the government, because with the collaboration the corporates can identify the genuine areas where the CSR funds have to be spent on. Okay, so therefore companies should regularly engage with the local NGOs for the understanding of ground situation or the ground realities, so they can utilize their expenses, they can utilize the CSR funds in this respect. So also there's a need for greater awareness among the local communities. For that we can use gram sabha, which is at the local level. Okay, so this can ensure that the people, the local communities in those areas get their due share of social development in the total company profits. So, however, when you write the conclusion for this answer, it would be better to write recommendations of Injenti Srinivas Committee on Corporate Social Responsibility. So, Injenti Srinivas Committee has been appointed on recommending the suggestions, improvements on the corporate social responsibility. However, the committee has come up with several recommendations. Okay, so few important recommendations are: make the CSR expenditure a tax deductible expenditure so that it incentivizes more and more private companies to come up to spend on these activities. Secondly, allowing companies to carry forward unspent funds for 3 to 5 years. For example, there are few companies who have not spent their funds on these activities since last 3 to 5 years. So we should also allow the companies to carry forward unspent funds. Third, aligning Schedule 7 of the Companies Act 2013 with Sustainable Development Goals. Now, we have to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. So, Sustainable Development Goals contains, for example, hunger, eliminating hunger, alleviating poverty, and gender equality, education for all, healthcare for all. So therefore, in this respect, we need to align Schedule 7 of the Companies Act 2013 with the Sustainable Development Goals. So after that, balancing local area preferences with national priorities is also important. For example, whenever a company has taken up a CSR activity, so that should be aligned with the national priorities. National priorities should also be taken into consideration. So this is all about the CSR, the corporate social responsibility, and what is the significance of CSR funding. So after that, we need to understand about the environmental justice. So because of climate change and also environmental degradation, large scale environmental degradation, particularly after the industrial revolution that has took place, we there's a concern environmental injustice or climate injustice. Now in this context we need to understand what exactly the environmental justice means and what is the importance of environmental justice. So in this context we can give one example of environmental injustice. So firstly, understand what exactly the environmental justice means. So the concept of environmental justice origin origin in 1980s. So this was originated in 1980s in United States. Okay, so environmental justice can be interpreted in two ways. So one is social movement. Environmental justice can also be considered as a social movement that particularly focuses on ensuring equitable distribution of environmental benefits and also burdens. Okay, so it focuses on equitable, there should be an equitable distribution of environmental benefits and burdens. So in case if there is no equitable distribution of these environmental benefits and burdens, then that cannot be called as environmental justice. That can be called as environmental injustice, and that is what has been happening now, because industrial revolution has taken place in West. The living standards of the people in the West have significantly improved. However, now the consequences of industrial revolution are faced by the poor countries, the developing countries, the underdeveloped countries. Okay, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and in the Pacific Island nations. So they have been facing the brunt of the climate change. However, so when we talk about the other side of the climate justice, it is an interdisciplinary body of social science. Okay, so this particularly consists of environmental justice theories, environmental laws, and how these laws are being enforced, and also environmental policy planning and sustainable development and governance. So this is what broadly the environmental justice exactly mean. So here environmental justice means a balance between planet, people, and profit, taking everything into the consideration. The benefits and the burdens have to be equitably shared among the different sections of the society. Right. So what is the importance of environmental justice in present times? So what is its importance? So firstly, there's always a debate over development and environmental degradation. Okay, so this is a major debate across the globe. So why? Because now most of the countries have already developed, the Western countries were already developed. Okay, so in the process of development, they have destroyed the environment. However, the destruction of the environment, the impacts are inequitable, because the poor and underdeveloped countries have been impacted because of the development that took place in West. Okay, so in this context, countries should focus environment protection or development. Okay, so countries like India have no luxury to prioritize environmental protection over development. So now they have to focus on development, because most of the people do not have decent standard of living for countries like India. So therefore the measures taken for development largely have a negative impact on environment. So the measures which were already taken have a negative impact on the environment. So in this context, climate change has negatively impacted the rainfall patterns, because that has led to El Nino and La Nina like phenomenons, increased intensity of cyclones across Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea, and this has also increased the food security risks faced by these vulnerable countries, and cities have been sinking due to the rising sea levels. Okay, so this is being evident from the fact that recently IPCC come up with a report, and this report the world strictly warned the global community about the devastating impacts that will come up with rising global temperatures beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. Secondly, prioritizing investment is also very important. So what are the areas we need to prioritize for investment? So that is also very important, because the developing countries, so they lack funds and they also lack the technology. However, on the other hand, the Western countries are not ready to provide technology transfer and also the financial resources for these countries. Okay, so therefore in this context, the developing countries, since they lack funds, so it is very difficult for them to implement the climate change actions. However, the funds generated through the clean development mechanism are inadequate to handle the current crisis. So in this context, whatever the developed countries have promised to these developing countries should be given. Okay, so climate justice provides for the possibilities to prioritize investment around the vulnerabilities of the communities who are worst affected by the climate change. Okay, and third is lobbying by businesses and industrial groups. So even though the countries have a political will to take up several measures to protect the environment, prevent the degradation of the environmental resources or the natural resources, there's a huge lobbying by the businesses and industrial groups with respect to this. For example, the oil-based companies in US has led to US pulling out of the Paris climate deal. Okay, so there's a huge pressure on the Trump administration to pull out US from the Paris deal. Okay, so oil-based companies and in fact big industrialists in fossil fuel based businesses, they have been pressurizing government not to take decisions. Okay, so now the world has been making transition towards renewable based energy solutions. However, they have increasing these uh, you know uh, fossil fuel based industrialists have been pressurizing the governments not to make a quick transition towards renewable energy resources. So after that, the climate justice shifts debate to the perspective of suffering communities and policy framing. Now the debate has been shifted in favor of the communities who have been facing the brunt of the environmental degradation. Now, in this context, we should also understand the resistance that was being shown by these developed countries, the developed West, which is reluctant to provide finances and funds and technology to the developing and least developed countries. So, in fact, if you look at USA has come out of the Paris deal, and even Canadian Parliament is also refused to allocate more funds or invest more in climate change prevention actions or climate change preventive actions. So therefore these things largely show that there's a neglect on the part of the developed nations to spend more on the climate resilient infrastructure projects, to transfer technology, transfer funds and finances to these developing countries. Okay, so they are not ready to shoulder the historic responsibilities because they are responsible for the current climate disasters or environmental injustice. So therefore, climate justice focuses on inequitable nature of the impact of climate change. So there is no doubt that there is an inequitable impact of the climate change. The poor and underprivileged communities have been suffering the worst because of the environmental degradation. So therefore, these countries have to shoulder the larger responsibility. They have to provide funds, finances, and also the technology to these developed countries so that they can develop the resilience and they can also adapt and mitigate the negative consequences of the climate change. So in this context, we have to understand what is the meaning of environmental injustice. Okay, so environmental injustice can be defined as a disproportionate effect of pollution and contamination of the environment on the communities who are living in low income countries, developing countries, least developed countries, and also the island nations. So this can be called as environmental injustice. So this is I have rightly explained the developing countries as they are historically responsible for the current climate change or the climate crisis, environmental degradation, and the impact has not been faced by these developed countries because they have high standards of living compared to these people in poor and underdeveloped countries. Okay, so areas with more industrial sites, they usually have a higher concentration of pollution in air, water, and soil. So higher concentration of pollution can affect the quality of life, health, and well-being of residents who live in that area or close to that area. So in fact, now the multinational companies, they have been earning a huge profits, but they are contaminating and polluting the environment, which they are not taking care of, even though they are getting a huge benefits, huge profits by setting up manufacturing companies, production units over there. So in conclusion, you can just emphasize on the what is the main concern of environmental justice. So it demands to look beyond the environmental and ecological consequences of climate change. So not just look at the environmental and ecological consequences of climate change, and it emphasizes to take strong political action to secure the future generations. We need to secure the future generations. We need to secure the interests of the people who are poor, underprivileged, so they do not have adequate financial means and they are suffering with poor living standards. So therefore environmental justice have a humanizing effect. Okay, it humanizes the effect of climate change, and it will also insist on a shift in discourse on greenhouse gases and melting ice caps into a civil rights movement that focuses on people, communities who are most vulnerable to the impacts of environmental degradation and climate change. So in this respect, it is very important to work with the local communities and the poor countries and also the non-governmental organizations to ensure the environmental justice is taken care of. So this is how you can conclude this answer. Okay, so that's all for today, and tomorrow also we will discuss few questions. Right, thank you.